everybody, and welcome to The Point, your weekly show for all things sports, straight out of the 412 in Pittsburgh. My name is Riley Taylor, and I'm your host. I'd like to start this episode by extending a great thank you to all of you that tuned into our inaugural episode on Monday, June 15th. If this is your first time joining us here on The Point and you didn't catch episode 1, click the link in the description or the card above to catch our debut episode where we discuss the outlook of the NHL playoffs with a few series predictions, as well as the disaster burning in Buffalo, the NBA playoff tournament winners and losers, LeBron's chances at glory and how we expect players to perform, and finally, what's wrong with the MLB and Pittsburgh Pirates as they try to move forward into starting the 2020 MLB season. And now, here's the lineup for today's episode. We're going to tackle two very important topics, with the first being the NFL as I give you a detailed outlook on what we should realistically expect from the Steelers this season as Ben Roethlisberger returns to give them a much-needed offensive lift. Then we will dive much deeper into the MLB and what I personally think the timeline for a shortened season should look like if we want to see any baseball played for this year. This timeline comes as crucial information was released this week about avoiding playing any baseball in the colder fall months, and that MLB Commissioner Ron Manfred said that he is not confident that the 2020 MLB season will even happen. Time to dive into a detailed look at the Steelers, providing you with some realistic expectations for how their record should look this fall up until their bye week. So to start off, the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that year after year has such high expectations to perform to make a run at their 7th Super Bowl, but can't help but fall short as injuries happen and they heavily play down to their competition. Now, I won't lie to you guys when I say that I am thrilled to have Big Ben back on the field, and he was truly the missing piece last season that made the Steelers fall short. But listen, as many of us here at The Point have discussed, the entire season, the entire upcoming season depends on if Ben Roethlisberger can stay healthy. If he goes down again, and I mean for any considerable amount of time, we're going to see a direct repeat of last year, even though our schedule is the easiest in the entire league. Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges can briefly fill in and give you a slight chance to put some drives together, but if our receiving core doesn't burn their defenders and get completely open, when these two are leading the team, you can forget about any major success, and we saw that last season. These guys put the ball up and hope that their wideouts will make the play. They aren't picking a specific spot for the ball to land like Ben and other experienced QBs can do. Now, I do think someone like Mason Rudolph, do I think that he's somebody that can lead the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers after Ben Roethlisberger? Honestly, I'm not too sure about that. You have to cut him some slack since he was a third string and backup quarterback for the first 2 full years of his career. This guy left college after being a starter, getting consistent game reps week after week, to sitting on the bench, getting practice reps and getting minimal time in preseason games. I believe if he were put in last year's situation right out of college in his first year with the team, we would have seen much different results out of Mason. But all in all, only time can tell if he can be the real deal. His college numbers are fantastic, and he still has the potential to be an NFL starting QB, I believe. But we are probably going to see the Steelers try to draft QBs in the next couple of years in the first and second rounds, given that they have those draft picks available and that there's an uncertain timetable with Ben Roethlisberger. Now, flipping to the other side of the ball, we can and definitely should expect last year's defense to return to the field, and we should get the same results out of guys like Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, Devin Bush, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden, you name them all. I mean, for how brutal the season was last year, the Steelers defense managed to be ranked 5th overall in points allowed, but struggled against the run a bit, being ranked 14th. I mean, TJ Watt and Bud Dupree combined for 26 sacks last year and 12 forced fumbles. QBs just weren't and still are not safe with those two rushing, which really opens the door for guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Joe Hayden to make plays out of the air to get the ball moving the other way. Now, this Steelers defense was phenomenal at making turnovers happen, and that's something we didn't really see them do in the past. And if this is the case for this season upcoming, that they will continue with turnovers, we will definitely cash in with more touchdowns on offense, because having Ben back on the other side of the ball is crucial for that. We got so many turnovers last year, but we're kicking a few field goals and getting very minimal amounts of touchdowns, and we should expect that to change if this defense shows up. So, after all of that being said, here is how I expect the first half of the 2020 season to go for the Steelers. Look, the Steelers have the easiest rated schedule in the entire NFL, but we cannot let, unrealistic expectations get on the table when we know that this team can continue to play down to its opponents, although being coached by a great coach in Mike Tomlin. So looking into the first week of the season, the Steelers are up against the New York Giants in New York. And although this is a very easy game on paper, I don't expect the Steelers to come out dominating, but I do see them clutching a late victory with the defense with a projected score of 24-17. 2 touchdowns and a field goal I think is pretty realistic for the very first game of the season for the Steelers defense. Now week 2, we have the Denver Broncos at home. And now although Denver is another team that the Steelers are heavily favored over on paper, they had some closer, and Denver had some closer games against the 49ers and the Seahawks last season, but ultimately failed to get points against tough teams like the Chiefs, Packers, and Bills. So they only scored a combined total of 12 points in those 3 games against the Chiefs, Packers, and Bills. That's brutal. But this is just a team that I've seen and continue to see the Steelers continually struggling against, but see their defense outplaying a young QB in Drew Lock, who may or may not be the starter. I believe he will be the starter for the Broncos looking up. And they also added a new wide receiving core a bit with Jerry Jeudy and KJ Kamler. But the Steelers really should take this game at a score around 26-16, and that's what I take. Now, week 3, the Steelers are facing a very confusing Houston, Texas team as they move DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. I mean, no matter what, Deshaun Watson always has the ability to put the ball up, but without his number 1 receiver that he's known for many years, that's going to be very tough. Now, they look for David Johnson to move the ball as much as possible, but given that he only accumulated 345 yards last season and 94 touches with Arizona, means that he's probably going to be very rusty at getting a lot of carries. Now, I see week 3 being a much closer one between these two, with the game going either way, but we could definitely see the Steelers sneak by with a 27-20 win, but they could also drop this game. It's kind of hard to say what's going to happen once we get Ben back. Is he going to be on his game or not? Week 4, we have the Steelers playing the Titans now in Tennessee. And this, unfortunately, is a game that I really see the Steelers struggling with, given that Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill continue what they did last year. I can see Pittsburgh dropping week 4 to the Titans at 27-20 on the exact flip side of last week in the previous week, and leaving them at 3-1 on the young season, which isn't a bad position to be in. Now, week 5 for the Steelers, we take on their cross-state rival in the Philadelphia Eagles at Heinz Field. Now, given the recent news that guard Brandon Brooks suffered a torn Achilles for the Eagles, this could be much more of a struggle for them. The Eagles will be coming off a week 4 game away at the San Francisco 49ers. So I see this as being a more difficult tilt for them, as they are playing 2 games on the road, in a row, and facing the defending number 2 team in the NFL. Now, I do see this being a bit closer again, and the Steelers edging this one out 27-24 with a field goal as time expires to prove the 4-1, but this all again depends if Big Ben is healthy. If he isn't, this could be a complete different look at this season. Now, week 6 approaches, and we see the Steelers facing it off against the Cleveland Browns in another home game. Now, any Steelers fan is no stranger to the fact that Pittsburgh has played down pretty brutally to the Browns in the last few seasons. But this game should be very interesting with all that went down between these two squads last season with Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph. And unfortunately, this is a game that if the Steelers really don't nail themselves in and really get themselves established early, they could really be in trouble. But if they find themselves up a score or 2 at the half, I definitely see them establishing their first divisional win of the season. And we could see the Steelers take this one 28-17. But if they get down early, that's when we're really going to see a struggle, as we saw last year. But then again, Ben wasn't on the team then. And now moving into week 7, I see our 5-1 Steelers on the cliff's edge as they head into Baltimore. The Ravens will, likely have a lot of momentum heading into this game, as they will be playing the Redskins, Bengals, and then the Eagles in the 3 weeks prior. 3 very easy opponents for a team that really showed up last year. I can see the Steelers keeping this one close on defense, and potentially, if they can surpass Baltimore with turnovers, that will really help in their favor. But unless this ends up being true, we could see the Steelers most likely drop this one in overtime. I see this being 32-26, Baltimore getting the ball right off the bat in overtime and securing their win. So all in all, we're probably looking at the Steelers with a 5-2 record heading into their bye week at week 8, which could be, pretty decent for them if we see some injuries show up. So again, folks, I am just trying to be as realistic as possible with these expectations with this season preview. I mean, It is very easy to look at the easiest schedule in the NFL and say, man, the Steelers are going to be 6-1. They're going to be 7-0 with Ben with them at the bye week. But this is just something that we have said year after year with this team. We look at their schedule, we say win, 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 and then look at what we get. So if Ben can stay healthy and provide them with this offensive boost, we could see them. I see them at 5-2 just to give them that leeway. But we never know. We could see them at 6-1 or even in 7-0 if they sweep to the bye week. Now I'd like to invite all of you to come back for Monday's episode as I give my take on the remaining 9 games that the Steelers will play, starting out with week 9 against their rival in the Dallas Cowboys. As we discussed in our first episode, the MLB isn't looking too good right now as there have been many ongoing struggles to begin the 2020 season. This week, players came out and stated that they just want to be told when and where, and they will show up ready to play. Now, obviously that is much easier said than done because of the complicated logistics that go into a modified season, but it's at least good to see that they are on board with an immediate beginning to their season. Now, of course, we know that time is running out for the MLB as league officials scramble to get things started, even thinking the season won't happen at all, as the commissioner said. But new information this week from the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases stated that the MLB likely needs to restrict play to the warmest summer months to avoid a more rapid spread of COVID-19 and other infectious diseases in the fall. Now, when this episode debuts, a plan could have been chosen for the MLB, but no matter what, a season needs to be planned out within the next few days or weeks at max if we want to see any baseball. The good news in this is that the All-Star break, which is usually taken as the halfway point of the season, wasn't slated to happen until the week of July 14th. So this being said, we still have time, but the margin is very, very small. And right now, I'm going to give you my take on what the season should look like if it were to happen. 65 games, mostly divisional, beginning around July 20th. Now, obviously it could happen earlier, but I just think that's realistic now that we are approaching the 20th of June. They'll probably need a month to set it up. And the season should wrap up around August 22nd. We're likely only a month of baseball, but it is baseball in some sense. I'd encourage as many doubleheaders as possible, maybe 2 or 3 a week, throughout the time, and to allow rest even because if players are having to play every single day, double headers and stacking the games together could eventually allow for rest days later on in the weeks. Now, beginning on August 24th or 25th, this could be the official start of the postseason, which I believe would have roughly 16 teams. Given how short the season needs to be, I think there should be an expansion. Skip the wild cards and go straight to a 5-game series lengths that would end up roughly, ending around September 4th and having 8 teams play every single day. This would then set us up to just have 8 teams remaining after a few weeks and right in the beginning of September. Now, I think the second round series should also be 5 games apiece in length just to keep things brief as fall approaches. Then, after the second round concludes, we will just have 4 teams left to play around the 12th of September. The semifinal series could now be played in what I believe should be a normal 7-game format, with a rest day given in between for teams. Since these teams have made it so far, they're going to need this extra rest after playing so much baseball in such a little amount of time. We could then see the semifinal series finish up around maybe the 26th of September if they were to go all 7 games max, which is unlikely, but it could happen. Thus leaving just 2 teams left to battle for a World Series with a 7-game traditional format. And I think you just can't get rid of that. If we're going to have 7 games in a semifinal, we should have it in a final as well. And we just have to kind of bring it back to the roots in some way if possible. So all said and done, if a World Series with 2 teams was to go 7 games max, we could see having ourselves a 2020 MLB World Series champion around the 9th or 10th of October in fitting into these frames in this time frame that we have heard from these doctors. So obviously this is a very rough, drawn-out plan that would require possibly host cities and a lot of logistical work, but I think it's heavily realistic as a time frame if we would like to see any baseball played in such a little time frame with likely a month of a regular season. Now, of course, we would have loved to have a season around 81 games or so, but I just don't see that happening with the amount of time that has been wasted. And with this happening, players have even come out to say that they are disgusted with league officials and management and how this has come together. So there it is, my take on a 65-game season with many doubleheaders, and hopefully wrapping it up in a month, and then 2 sets of 5-game series in the first 2 rounds, and then 2 sets of 7-game series in the semifinal and the final for the World Series. Now, all said and done, as we said in episode 1, I would still expect the Dodgers and the Yankees to be the ones to make considerate runs at a championship, given the rest that their star pitchers will have. Well, folks, that is all we're going to have time for today on The Point with our timeline for an MLB season and what we should expect out of the Steelers in their first 7 games of 2020. We'd love to hear from all of you and what you think on our takes on these topics, so feel free to add us on Twitter and Instagram at @thepoint_412 or throw your opinions in the comment section below and we'll get back to you. As always, I'm Riley Taylor, and we'll see you on Monday.